Hey guys, had another question which was a confusion between carbs and sugars on keto. So I wanted to create a quick little video just to kind of cover this topic because it can be confusing because on the back of the label with a lot of these foods you have the sugar grams and then you have the carbohydrate grams, okay? So what are you trying to eliminate? Well, sugars are carbohydrates, okay? And they're the things that are broken down into the basic elements. You have cane sugar, which came from sugar cane. So you're taking out the fiber, taking out all the nutrients, and you have this white powder. And then we have grains, which is the seed of a plant. And so in that grain, you have fiber, you have bran, you have the wheat germ, all sorts of vitamins. And then when they grind that up, they strip off the fiber part and they give you this white flour. That's a really refined grain. Then you have another seed called rice, which you have wild rice with all the fiber and everything, and then you have a refined product, white rice, without anything but just the pure carbohydrate. Each of those has a different reaction on blood sugars. And then you have starches, you have potatoes, you have wild yams, you have sweet potato, you have different forms of potato, you have mashed potatoes, French fries. Each one has a slightly different effect on blood sugars. And then you have fruits, which have a combination of fructose and fiber. And then you have juice, of course. If you're taking out all the fiber and you have fruit juice, it's going to have a much greater impact on your blood sugars than the actual fruit. Then you have berries, which have a lower effect on blood sugars. Okay, they have a lot more fiber, less sugar. And then vegetables, which basically have a lot of fiber, very low sugar, so they're going to have a very low effect on blood sugars. You have mushrooms, which is considered a fungus, which has a smaller amount of carbohydrate. Of course, not a lot of sugar, but it does have a little bit of carbohydrate. And then we have nuts, which has a combination of fat, protein, and some carbohydrate. Certain nuts have different ratios of carbohydrate, like the cashew, for example, has much more carbohydrate than the pecan, for example. And then we have seeds, the same thing. It's a combination of protein, fat, and some carbohydrate. And of course, in the sugar family, we have the beet sugar and the GABA, dextrose, high fructose corn syrup. Each one of these can have various effects on blood sugars as well. So with keto, what we're trying to do is we're trying to eliminate all the refined sugars and all the actual sugar grams. Like, you don't want to consume things for more than like 2 grams on the back of the label. You want to keep it below 2 grams, and best to keep it like at 0 or less than 1 gram. That would be the best thing. Then we have something called the glycemic index, which is the measurement or index of how fast a food will spike the blood sugars, okay? And the whole goal with keto is to avoid spiking blood sugars and insulin. So there's a thing called the glycemic index, which is a measurement of how fast a food will raise blood sugars, okay? Now, grains are a lot higher on the glycemic index than actual cane sugar, which is interesting. So you want to avoid grains, all grains, even oatmeal, avoid it, okay? And then we have starches, which are also very high on the glycemic index. We want to avoid those, potatoes, things like that, okay? And then we get fruits, and the problem with fruits, they're just too high in sugar, and a lot of the fruits nowadays are hybrids, which means that they're bred with higher amounts of sugar. And then we get to these things called berries, which are similar to fruits. They do have some sugar, but they have a much lower glycemic index and a higher amount of fiber. Now, within the berry family, I would recommend blackberry and raspberries instead of strawberries and blueberries because they're lower on the glycemic index, okay? And then we talk about vegetables, and these are totally acceptable because they're very low on the glycemic index, have a lot of fiber, even though they're carbohydrates. Now, mushrooms, very low on the glycemic index, even though there's some carbs. Okay, nuts, low on the glycemic index. Just make sure you avoid cashews. And then we have seeds, another food that is very low on the glycemic index. And then you have other products like kombucha tea. So when you're reading labels, you really want to make sure you don't just look at the carbs, look at the sugar grams, because certain kombucha tea has like 6 grams, sometimes 10 grams. If you were to consume kombucha tea, purchase the ones that are like 2 grams or less. And of course, salad dressings have hidden sugars. Okay, so read not just the carbohydrates, but the sugar grams on the salad dressing and try to get those that have less than 1 gram. That would be the ideal scene. So when you're doing keto, make sure that the sugar grams are as close to zero as possible. And when you're looking for carbohydrates, it really has to do with the type of carbohydrates and the effect that it has on the glycemic index. You want to stick with mainly vegetables, a small amount of berries, maybe a half of a cup to a cup. Mushrooms are fine, nuts are fine, seeds are fine. All right, thanks for watching. So if you're enjoying these videos, click share and spread the word.